I know we mostly talk single family rentals here on this podcast, but I know a lot of you are also in the multifamily segment, and especially coming back after PMI Summit, I see that there's these multiple pillars of way to grow your business. And more importantly, as AI matures, these tools are going to start kind of blending, right? Like the value props are slightly different, but the ability to reduce friction of bridging a business model one to another as AI matures is very, very real. And that's why when Daniel Cunningham, who is a through and through entrepreneur, built this company Leonardo 24/7 in the multifamily space, decided to go out there, find a CEO to operate his company so he can move into the AI space in a much more aggressive posture and take part of this thing. You know, when I got in contact with him and, you know, he decided to join Vendoroo, it just really sparked an interesting conversation of where the value prop is of AI in multifamily, how things are changing, how it's different than SFR and the single family space, and just the insight of somebody that's actually grown a significant company, found a CEO to replace it and move on to something else. That is something I'm always interested in as an entrepreneur. It's something that I'm essentially in the middle of doing in my other company that isn't Vendoroo, so I can be totally, so I can do what I do at Vendoroo a little bit easier. And it's just a great strategic conversation on where multifamily is, how AI is affecting it, and inside the brilliant brain of Daniel Cunningham. Enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. You are a successful entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur in the multifamily space that has identified an opportunity that you see as really, really hard to solve and yet somehow achievable. And that feels like the spine of this thing, right? Like what's the point of view of like, hey, the world is this way, it's changing, like the world is this way and like this part of it is really hard. But things are changing, and so I see a new world coming, and this is my thesis around why all this stuff is going to work. That makes sense?
Okay. That actually goes really well with what I just recorded. I was like, look, when I found out that there was a company who's doing the hard part of all of this, like going all the way through and assigning vendors and getting pricing, like that's when I knew this was a company that wasn't just participating in this AI revolution, they were leading it. I think the low-hanging fruit on AI with respect to AI really started with leasing and phone calls. You know, their first, the old model in multifamily, which amazingly some people are still following, but that model was you'd have a leasing agent on site who was fielding all these phone calls, giving information about the property. Here's the available units. Here's the price. Yeah, we have a pool. No, we don't have a sauna. And that like took their whole day. And then in between all of that, they were supposed to fit in tours. Now you take people on tours, sell. The first kind of evolution of like, hey, that's not really necessary was to create these call centers. And the call centers, the calls would go to the call centers, and then the call centers would field that. The issue with that was and remains is, the call centers are not always a great experience for that person. This is your first touch point with potentially your new home. And those call centers don't always lend themselves to the best experience. Language barriers, not well trained, a lot of turnover. So to make sure they're always on brand, speaking your voice is a challenge. And so there's been a lot of complaints about that, not always working out the way people expected. So the low-hanging fruit, I think, in AI was to say, hey, AI can do that better. The voice models have progressed such that it's actually preferable talking to the AI versus, somebody where English is a second language. And AI never forgets about the details of the property. AI never gets it wrong when it comes to what are the available units, to what the pricing is. Like, as long as your data is right, AI is right every time. And it represents, if it's properly trained, your voice every time. So that was kind of the first, but that's easy. Like, what does AI need to do in that case? It just needs to pull out, your availability, needs to pull out your pricing, and a little database about the property. So that's sort of where things got launched in the industry was that. And I think it makes a ton of sense. There's no wonder that Elise did so well out of the gate, right? Because that was the low-hanging fruit. Now there have been some other extensions of that into, responding to residents or automating some things that need to be conveyed to residents. Like, hey, you moved in. How was your moving experience? Or your renewals coming up? What are you thinking? And again, easy. You have set points there on what the AI needs to reach out and talk about, and it can reach out and send those messages and even respond a little bit if somebody's got questions. But the hard part was the maintenance piece, because there's a lot of nuance to setting up a work order. A resident calls with a complaint, they want a work order filed. The first thing is, that may not be a work order. It may not even be a work order, maybe just a complaint.
Yep.
And even if it is a work order, sometimes it's something so simple that you can just resolve it over the phone. Push the GFI reset. We'll give you we'll bring out a battery for your smoke alarm. Like, there are things that are simple that don't really belong in the category of work orders. They don't warrant the time it takes for your technician to go over to that unit and deal with it. It can be solved. But if it can't be solved, then to create a work order and to refine what that work order is, such that when it comes in, it's been vetted. Here's exactly what the problem is. To be able to have AI ask the right questions about this leak in the sink. Well, is it leaking right now? Where is it leaking? Is it a giant gusher? Is this an emergency, or is this just a subtle drip? That AI can do that and process those work orders. That's hard. That's hard. And what Vendoroo does is to take that one step further and to say, now that we understand what the work order is, we're going to make a decision about whether or not this can be solved in-house with your in-house technicians based on what you've taught us about your skill set, what you've taught us about the kinds of work that your in-house technicians want to be doing, or do we need to rope in a vendor to do this work? And how we make that decision based on what vendor is, again, based on a set of rules that you define. You might set it up very simply. We don't do paint. We don't do, we don't unclog toilets, whatever. But along the way, you can teach the AI the nuance that makes a difference, such as, yeah, we normally will do HVAC, but not if we have to replace, a fan belt. If that's the problem, if there's a squeaky HVAC, then in that case, we want it to go to a vendor. And by the way, if it's the weekend, Bob doesn't work on the weekends. It's got to go to Dave. That kind of rich experience that we can engage in is unique to us and hard, and it's difficult. And what it does is allows you to completely tie off the whole maintenance triage process and put a bow on it, whether or not it needs to be a technician, whether or not it needs to be a vendor, whether or not it can be solved immediately with a little bit of triage. Like, just hand it over us. We got it. And that is, I think, the amazing heights to which AI has now grown behind a company like Vendoroo. And that was when I was thinking about what I was going to do next in this world, that is what convinced me that this was the company that was not only just participating in an AI, but was leading the AI revolution.
I appreciate that explanation, because in that explanation, you're essentially educating me on the nuanced differences between multifamily and single family, right? Like, I feel like I've been like up to my neck in single family. I know a little, like I've lived in multifamily, so I have like a sense of it, but I didn't realize, when I thought multifamily, I'm just like, man, when I used to live in that like apartment complex, they just have guys that they sent over, right? But like, obviously there is nuanced things around what your in-house team can do versus what they can't do. And that is something that is really complex. And then it goes into like the same kind of like vendor scenario that single family does. And beyond that, I also assume that there is skill sets that each person that you have on your in-house team can do, and availability that they can do, and perhaps nuances in personality and bedside manner and like how they get along with different residents and stuff like that. That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to the value prop, right? Like, I would assume that you made the value prop pretty clear when it comes to leasing, right? Like for leasing, it's the human being doing it. You're trying to, I guess, reduce your cost of a human being, so you outsource it. And then the language barrier is a problem. When it comes on the maintenance side, what is like who does the multifamily operator report to, right? Like in single family, the like you're reporting to all these different owners. Who's
Yeah.
the multifamily operator reporting to, and how does it, is this something that is a value to the business's bottom line, or is it to like the client's client the same way that is in single family?
It's definitely, the dynamic is definitely different.
Yeah.
However, so I just kind of laid out why you can trust Vendoroo to handle the triage. Now, why bother
Well, yeah,
having
why?
Vendoroo?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And in the multifamily world, typically your maintenance is performed by guys that are assigned on site. And those technicians are precious. First of all, hard to find, getting harder to find every day.
For
And
sure.
so the ones that you have are precious. We are burning them out by expecting them to triage work orders, take the angry phone call about the guy because his heat isn't working properly, manage that with aplomb, right? With great customer service, and triage those things, take time out of his day to manage that and still
Mhm.
get his work done. So you have to have whatever the ratio is, 1 per 50, 1 per 100, whatever you think it is. You need to have a certain number of maintenance guys on staff to do the work, because a portion of their time is not doing work. It's
Mhm.
doing this triage stuff. With Vendor in place, those guys focus on what they do best and what you hired them for,
Yeah.
which is to fix problems. You let us handle the nuance of the resident interaction. Vendor's model is always empathetic, understanding, patient, no matter how that resident shows up on that call. You let us handle the front lines of that, and your teams can work on fixing problems, which is what really, well, also contributes heavily to resident satisfaction.
Yeah, that's another good nuance. I guess in single family, at the end of the day, since you're hiring a vendor, the vendor was always just going to show up and do the work, and you're always going to have like a somebody in an office that is, one part receptionist, one part customer service that understands maintenance. Whereas in multifamily, you're having these people do it, where it's like the last person that fixed my garage. Oh, I've got an awesome handyman. I don't know if I would want him interacting with my client in a way that, like also has, like the maitre d' of a restaurant kind of vibe, right? Like not exactly his skill set, right? His skill set is to like nerd out with a tool in the garage and fix something. And those are these guys, right? Like you're not trying to get him to like be on the phone and like play phone tag with people and follow up and do all these kind of things. You want him just like out there fixing things, or else you're like wasting their skill set and their time, right?
Yes, that's right. And in addition to that, we have an after hours problem. So during the day, you want them focused on working, but what happens after hours? Well, the
Yeah.
model right now is you pay these guys to be on standby after
Mhm.
hours. So they they can't be with their families, they can't plan things because they never know if they're going to get called in.
Yeah.
So they don't like that. They don't dig that. Secondly, if they do get called in, you're paying them double time to
Mhm.
come in and do that work.
Yeah.
So from a cost and expense standpoint at the property level, that is in a very expensive work order. So if you can relieve the property of the cost of maintaining an after hours person who gets paid to pick up the phone, triage that work order, decide if it's an emergency, if it's not, figure out what to do. If it is, figure out, is he going to do it? If it's a vendor's going to do it, call that vendor. If you can relieve them of that expense, that time that it takes for that person after hours to do that, you will more than save the cost of having a system like Vendoroo in place. In another life, we did an analysis of this, and we figured that it cost $5 a unit a month between the after hours and the daytime to triage work orders, not to do them, not to perform any work, just to handle after hours phone calls, daytime phone calls. It costs you about $5 a unit.
Just to
Um,
figure out what's happening in a unit when something goes wrong, it costs you $5
Right.
each.
That's the cost to you at a property. So that's an additional savings for the property. So that accrues right to the bottom line.
Mhm.
So it's a way that you can improve your NOI.
Yeah.
Maybe you can do with one technician less, or maybe you got a technician that you can now share with another property. Who knows? but it's possible now with the efficiencies you gain by removing them from the triage process.
Makes sense. All right. So you've explained to me essentially the what attracts you to this problem and the why this thing is a problem. If you're in the multifamily space and someone forwarded this to you, well, we'd love to talk to you at Vendoroo. If you're really listening to what Daniel's talking about, you believe in this idea that your maintenance team is precious, that you don't want to put them in this position where they have to be hospitality people or task managers. You just want them out there fixing stuff. There's not enough of these folks to go around. We solve for that at Vendoroo. So if you want to talk about it, see how it works, come and get a demo, go to vendoroo.ai. Let them know that you want to talk to Daniel, right? You can just put that right in the form fill. Daniel will hop on a call with you himself, and you can have this conversation with him. Just go to vendoroo.ai. Hope to talk to you. I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I feel like a well-trained salesperson can tell me that stuff, right? Like, I want to know, you said in a past life, what is your past life, Daniel? Like, what is, like you're coming here, like what was Leonardo? How do you know so much about this space? Like, what got you into this space? Like, what is, like, give me like the short origin story of like how you got to like understanding that this was the thing that you want to go do.
Yeah, it's a long and winding road.
Yeah, I bet.
So I've been in multifamily for about 25 years. That started with my journey started on the asset management side with a company called Aimco, when Aimco was the largest multifamily REIT in the country. And in that capacity, we weren't, we were asset managers, not property managers. So we had to oversee the P&Ls of these assets. I had about 50 properties in a portfolio, and we'd work with the property managers. We would see that there was always stuff missed, stuff we as asset managers cared about, preventive maintenance, those things were missed because humans are, imperfect people. They don't know it all. They can't remember it all. So after I went and I started a management company in Los Angeles, where I really got into the trenches and understood the issue, I was inspired to start a software company called Leonardo 24/7, whose aim was to, rather than expect people to know it all and remember it all, was to automate all of that by gathering together the property amenities and equipment profile, geographic profile, and from that generate the daily guidance that property managers and maintenance technicians would need to be a good steward of that asset. So I started that company in 2011, technically launched in 2014. So I ran that company for about 10 years before we brought on another new tranche of private equity. It's a good time for me to step away, and we brought in a new CEO who's running it from here. But what I observed as CEO of Leonardo was the daily chaos at the property level. It is hard. It is every day there's something new. Every day there's something you didn't expect, and there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of residents that are upset. Somebody's always upset. Resident upset, especially. It's one of these careers that if you're doing your job, if you're really good at your job, you're going to upset somebody. It's one of the only careers that's like that, because if you're doing your job as a property manager, you're going to be evicting somebody for not paying their rent. You're going to be telling them they can't have their 75-pound pit bull on the property anymore, right? You have to make difficult decisions, have difficult conversations, and dealing with residents who are upset about maintenance issues is no small component of that. So if you can take that part out of kind of the daily grind for managers and their maintenance technicians, if you can let us handle that, let Vendoroo handle that with greater skill and empathy and patience than most human beings can muster, you're not only improving the resident experience, you're improving the lifestyle, the workplace environment for the people that run that property. Because there is enough stress already in overseeing a property like that, a property like what you see in a enterprise level multifamily portfolio, 100 units, 150 units or more. Being able to offload the front desk and the triage of those things to a company like Vendoroo is a godsend. I've seen it.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. You think of property management, multifamily property management. I guess single family is a little bit like this, but multifamily has that like hospitality level. It has that, the maintenance, repairs, and like the upkeep side of it. But you're right. It also has like a disciplinarian side of it. Like they are also like the sheriff of the multifamily compound, right? Like the little community as well. And like I never thought about how grating that must be, right? Like we hear about it on the single family side only on just like on the maintenance side alone. But in multifamily, I could see how it sets up to be like, yeah, why doesn't my thing work? And oh, by the way, don't tell me how to live my life in a much more in a much more kind of like grading way. And that layer of AI being able to like run intercept on that to a certain extent in a satisfactory way, I could see how that adds, like quality of life to employees and sets up for a better relationship if the person coming to fix my stuff is not also, I don't feel like biting the hand that feeds me because they're my disciplinarian as well. What you described earlier, right? Like in Leonardo sounds like as I get more educated on the tech space, it's almost like the difference between what you described to me is what I'm starting to conceptualize is the difference between automation and AI, right? Which is essentially you were able to get a whole bunch of like data together to provide outbound reminders, like instructions, processes for people to do stuff. But then it doesn't, but like it couldn't like interact back and forth with the resident. Is that kind of like the
Yeah, that's right.
representation? It was like a better checklist kind of thing, but not really a back and forth type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a fine way to think about it. We were really about Leonardo's about controlling, dictating, improving the human work that has to be done in contrast to what we're talking about on, which is doesn't require human work.
Yeah.
Right. This is just administrative.
Yeah.
Right. This is just process.
Yeah.
And so Leo is focused on kind of the grind, right? The hands-on things that have to be done to keep that asset running. And in the background now, well, used to be layered on top of that was the administrative stuff. We call it work order triage, resident triage, leasing. Like that was layered on top of all of that.
Mhm.
Now that stuff is being removed from the backs of these team members on the site level, and
Mhm.
they can really focus on what they do best. Those property managers are in many sense an important part of the resident experience. Like
Mhm.
we're not trying to remove them from the residents in contrast to single family, right? Where the property manager is a guy over there, like somewhere. I mean, I'd probably never talk to him.
Yeah.
In multifamily, like that person's there. Sometimes they live on the property. You see them
Yeah.
in their non-work environment, right?
True.
And so they play a role in creating a home for those residents, a sense of belonging.
Mhm.
And what drives a wedge in that are the friction points like maintenance issues that, if they're not handled well, create discord. And so if you can keep the property manager out of that piece by allowing vendor to handle that, you're allowing that property manager to focus in the areas where he can really shine or she can really shine and provide almost a concierge like experience to the residents because they're not dealing with the grind. You
One
said
of
hospitality. You said
Yeah.
hospitality, Pablo, earlier. I think that's a great kind of differentiator in what these companies seek to provide versus the single family world.
Yeah.
It's different, like a hospitality experience, a hotel like
Yeah.
level of attention is like the pinnacle of what management companies seek to provide, at least most of the ones managing class A assets. And that's not possible in most cases. And I think we help enable that.
That makes sense. Like I feel like single family home, right? Like when I got into the space, when I started looking at, I'm like a discipline of category design, right? Like, and as I started coming into like category design, one of the first companies that I saw doing it in the real world, pre me being in property management, was Second Nature. And so I had Andrew Smallwood on the podcast, and he was talking about, and he told me something that like they saw the idea that single family follows multifamily, and multifamily looked like single family today is like what multifamily looked like 20 years ago, and it's vertically integrated and it's done all these different things and it's institutionalized. And in one of the things that you're saying, single family is, I think that there's very few people talking about single family property managers becoming more of a hospitality kind of company. I think it's inevitable when AI comes out and all this type of stuff, but multifamily is already there. And then multifamily also has another layer. It's like it's going to be hospitality, but I'm also like a community guy, right? And one of the things, if I like when you look up community as in business, multifamily management is one of the places where people talk most about it, right? Like it's not just hospitality, it's also trying to create this like sense of belonging in between people as well.
Yeah.
Which to your point, right? Like if you are inserting friction, like last time it wasn't too long ago that I lived in one of these like multifamily spaces, and it's like, yeah, man, I saw my maintenance guys. They lived on site, right? Like and like
Yeah.
if now if now every time I see them, they're like, oh, I'm like 10 emails behind. I'm gonna get to you in 3 days. Right. Like that drives a big wedge in the community. They can't be community members if they're behind on communication and whatnot and all these like clerical things that AI is now able to really, really handle. I didn't think about it from like a how much that would disrupt the flow of me walking my dog if I run into my maintenance guy and I'm pissed at him because I haven't heard back from him.
Creating a sense of community is often associated with the highest retention rates
Yeah.
on renewals.
Mm.
And so, to the extent that you can improve community by removing the friction that comes from difficult, poorly handled human communication, then you've made people feel more at home, more safe. And I think that's one of the unappreciated benefits of what's happening in AI.
Well said. Well said. Why didn't you build it, man? Like you have already built like a tech company in this space, right? Like you see the opportunity. Like what makes this thing so hard?
There's this misperception because people, their first experience with AI is chat gpt, and you can ask chat gpt, you can say, hey, I got a toilet leak, how am I going to fix my toilet leak? Chat gpt will tell you how to fix your toilet leak, right? There's this misperception that, oh well, how hard can it be, right? To if chat gpt can tell me how to fix my toilet, like this must be easy. And what we know, being on the vendor side, what we've seen is that the edge cases in property management will sink you if you don't handle them properly. So if you have 20 phone calls that go fine because ChatGPT can answer the sink is leaking, but it doesn't understand when the difference between that leak being small or significant. It doesn't understand that you're on the second floor versus the first floor and you're impacting people below. Like there is a lot to build around the LLM intelligence that allows that understands context. There's a lot to build around that to handle edge cases, things that people don't expect, a specific process that you want to follow that's different than the next guy you want to follow, how you teach AI that, how that's captured, how that's reflected, how you query to find out why your AI is doing things a certain way. Like there's a lot that goes into that you have to build and have be able to foresee needing that to build in order to pull this off. Mm. And I'm a civil engineer by education, right? I want to build stuff. The nuance of what it takes to AI in a way that feels flawless is lost on somebody who doesn't have the kind of expertise that the AI team at Vendoroo has. It feels very easy until you try to do it at scale, and then stuff starts to break. And so I didn't have the expertise to really dive into that. I could see tangentially that there was value in that. In fact, we partnered with another company. I realized the value of what Vendoroo is doing so much that I didn't know about Vendoroo, but I partnered with another company to help bolt this on to Leonardo as a service. So I really appreciate it, and I knew that I was not the guy to build it. Like, know thyself. That was not my skill set. It wasn't my tech team's skill set, and it's not easy. It isn't easy.
Tell me about the difficulties of just bolting it on, right? Like from a technical standpoint, I'm starting to understand that the bolting on of AI to to software that's built off of like a form-based architecture is asking for even more problems than just a problem of like solving for AI natively. Is that something that you experienced when you guys started trying to bolt stuff on?
Well, before the rise of agentic AI, it was a giant headache because we were still in a land of APIs. And APIs, if even public APIs, they're not built right, you run into problems. We saw this all the time integrating with the large PMS platforms. Those APIs didn't have endpoints for everything we wanted to connect to. They would revise the APIs. They wouldn't communicate that to their software partners. They break. Our clients would get upset. I mean, it happened every month. Agentic AI allows us to take a little different approach. We can almost dispense with APIs at some level, because Our AI is like a teammate. It's like part of your team. And just like you train your team to use your software, Vendoroo's agents can meet you where you are with whatever software you're using, because we can learn to use that software. Your CRM, your PMS, a company like Leonardo 24/7, we can build an agentic process to get up and running and using that software in lightning speed compared to what took to build an integration with an API. So like 5 seconds ago, what you said was really hard. And now and going forward, it's a different story. It's easier to pull that off now than you could a year ago.
So then what's going to make a company, if it's so much easier to do now, like what's going to make a company win? Like, what do you see as like the advantage that we could possibly create here that like, what's the moat then? Like if this is getting so easy, or I mean it's hard to train but easy to implement. Is that what you're saying?
The integration is now easy.
Yeah, the integration's easy.
Yes. The mode is not the integration.
Okay.
And everyone should celebrate that. We should
Yeah.
celebrate that. Clients should celebrate that.
Yeah.
Right. That's not the hard part anymore. The hard part, and gosh, it really is hard to describe this, but the hard part is all of the mechanics below the surface that ensure that your AI is responding the right way, is responding with the right tone and voice and empathy, knows when there's an edge, recognizes an edge case and doesn't hallucinate, like
Yeah.
recognizes the edge case and raises its hand, which is why at Vendoroo, we have human in the loop still. Like there's
Yeah.
somebody there that AI can say, our AI can like raise their hand and say, this doesn't, something about this doesn't sound right. Can you kind of take a look over my shoulder and make sure I'm doing this right? And getting all of that built in such a way that it feels seamless to the end consumer is the hard part. It's the hard
Yeah.
part.
I remember the first episode one of this podcast when I interviewed Reza. He described it as like it's like building the educational system, right? Like everybody has like software was like building textbooks, and these days we're essentially designing the schools to train these agents on like how to act. And that is so much more like infinitely difficult of like how do you actually raise a child versus how do
Yeah.
you write a book that the child can read kind of thing, right? And
Yes.
that's been kind of like my understanding of it. It's just like this innate understanding of how you train it in order to behave well when you are raising a human, right? Is kind of the thing. And then the idea that like you can't really do it unless you own the outcome completely to start. And then you build in the tech as you're training it, right? So like the fact that we started as mostly human with a little bit of it using an AI was very, very necessary to like paint the picture in order to like then train the AI to now get to the point where it's like now it's AI with some human oversight kind of thing, right? Like I found that really, really intriguing. What did you,
Well,
as you
you know
were,
what? Actually, sorry, Pablo. You know the analogy I heard him use the other day, which really struck home with me. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's it. I get it. I'm glad you brought that up.
cool.
The analogy he uses, it's the difference between putting your car on cruise control versus a self-driving car, right? For a moment, they look exactly alike. My foot's off the gas, the car's going straight, right? It's going at the speed I asked. That looks pretty good, right? Then like the person steps into the road, right? Cruise
Yeah,
control plows them right over, or the red light, cruise control drives right through it.
yeah,
So that's what your AI will do to you
yeah,
if you don't have the kind of development behind it that Vendoroo has. Somebody's going to step in front of you and your AI is just going to cruise right through that issue, that edge case, whatever it is. And to be able to have full automatic driving,
hmm,
that you trust it, you take your hands off the wheel, you step back, you're tempted to fall asleep, but you don't. But you're tempted to have full self-driving vehicle is very hard. Elon Musk has been saying we're going to get full self-driving for 5 years, right?
yeah.
Why isn't he here yet? It's hard because the edge cases are hard. It's not hard to go straight. It's not even that hard to maybe even take a turn,
Yeah.
but a hairpin turn or a cone in the road or construction or a fleet of ducks that fly, like all of
Or
that
it's
stuff.
raining.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's what you have to be cognizant of is the
Yeah.
full self-driving scenario.
That's interesting, man. How did you, when you were, I assume a guy of your ilk and skill set and everything, like the type of guy that is able to build a tech company, institute a CEO, and then move on to their next project. You have options, right? Like what gave you the confidence? Like, what did you see in this, in either the technology or the team or whatever, that made you be like, okay, cool, I'm going to hitch my wagon to this?
Okay, so I think the answer to that question is really starts with the team. First principles is I wanted to find a team that reflected the same work ethic, the same values, and the same attitude towards growing a company that I do. That starts with, first of all, zero ego. Like, we may be wrong about what we're doing today, and when we find that out, we're ready to pivot, do something different. Like, zero ego about that. Make a bet about what you think is the right thing to do, and if it doesn't work out, commit to it. We all commit to it. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's all right to be wrong, but learn, improve, and do better next time. And I heard something akin to that every time I talk to somebody with it. It is a very entrepreneurial crew, and that's not by accident. A lot of the folks that are in, senior positions at Vendoroo have started companies of their own, have been in senior executive positions, and somehow we've all coalesced under the same umbrella to bring that entrepreneurial attitude to this young company and help it hopefully try to avoid the landmines that we all stepped on in our younger days starting our first companies. So the dynamic here is exactly what I was looking for and really hard to find. Second thing is, it was really clear, since I'd had kind of a peek under the hood of some other tech companies, it was really clear that what we were building was legit, right? It wasn't a mechanical Turk, which is a lot of AI right now, where it's AI, and then there's a guy behind the curtain, like frantically trying to do the stuff. That is still a thing for sure. It's not a thing here, and it's interesting. The reason it's not a thing here is because of the evolution. Started with it's all human. Like, we're offshoring all this work to us. So it's all human, and then what can we parcel out piece by piece that makes sense to do in AI? And so, though that offering has grown to a point where, like, okay, now we're an AI company where all of that is being done by AI, but it started with the underpinnings of human beings, and that's unique. That's unique to Vendoroo. That story, that method of evolution is not something I think has happened anywhere else. So the tech, the people, and then thirdly, I really wanted to be with a company that was forward looking with respect to AI generally. I had a lot of interesting opportunities to work with, other, bread and butter, brick and mortar kind of companies that service the multifamily industry and that do very well and that are essential but it's not interesting. What we're doing is interesting. It's going to be existential for companies as they grow. Like, it's going to be like air, like it will be one of those things that in a short order, we're going to be looking back like, how do we ever do this on our own? How do we ever do this with people? And I love the notion of being involved at the forefront of something like that. That doesn't come around very often. It feels like a long time ago, I started a company in the late 90s that had this crazy idea they could use the internet to download music and buy music, right?
You started Napster?
I was at the same time as Napster doing something very similar.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, but like, we knew something was happening. We could sense it. We didn't really know where it was going to go, but there was all this opportunity potential. This feels a lot like that. Like, we don't know exactly where this is going to go, but I want to be here when it happens.
Yeah, I think that excitement is super palpable, man. One of the most, like, first principle things that I have learned most recently is this idea that when context shifts happen, it's when this, like, massive abundance happens for certain sectors. And this is, like, the biggest context shift I think any of us are ever going to live through, right? Like, it feels bigger than the internet and all that stuff, right? This shift in the way that we do work and the jobs that humans do versus not do feels like the biggest existential problem that we're going to get to solve for in our lifetime, most likely. Where do you think it goes, right? Like, I have some, like, really, as you know, I wrote a book about AI and property management for single family, but I have a good sense of where it's going in single family. Where do you think it goes in multifamily, man? Like, what is the ideal kind of, like, scenario for the industry, and where do you think it is in 5, 10 years if all goes well?
My guess is that you will find a majority of properties whose only on-site staff is a maintenance guy. And that person will become the ambassador for the management company or the owner operator. And so those people will not just they will be skilled at maintenance because that's their primary mission, but they will also be highly paid, highly trained ambassadors at the same time, because because I believe property managers can migrate away in this scenario.
Yeah. So where do you think all this is going, man?
Okay. Well, if I had to venture a guess, I think that we will see in the not too distant future, say 5 years, I think you will start to see a lot of properties across the country who have just a maintenance person on site. I think property managers may migrate away, but that maintenance technician is going to be not just a maintenance technician. He's going to be an ambassador for the management company, the owner operator. And so they will be more well-trained, more well-paid than they are now, but capable of working with residents when they're, being the face of the company when there's an issue that needs to happen, but also being able to focus on their work because, companies like Vendoroo are really handling all the minutia. There's an interesting company that I'm involved with a little bit that is taking hologram, like these devices that create holograms, like the size of a refrigerator, and can create a real hologram of a real person inside this box. And, they're proposing to put those at properties so that the managers can work someplace else and beam into the hologram device when they're needed. Like, I think those sorts of creative ideas are becoming possible. I think that perhaps this seems paradoxical, but that as a result of what's going on with fewer people at the property, residents will be as happy, if not happier, because they mostly care about their issues getting resolved quickly, getting resolved in a free, empathetic manner. And we can accomplish that without people having to be on site anymore. Leaner properties, P&Ls probably get a little bit better as a result. And honestly, this can't come soon enough because there's been a problem recruiting people into the property management industry, maybe forever, but it's been really acute since COVID, right? Since people learned they have an option, right? They can work from, there are other options they can do for work that weren't so prevalent pre-COVID. Yeah. Now it's hard to get people to come in the industry. It's a tough industry. It's very difficult to be a property man. It might be the worst. I've said this on other podcasts before. I think it might be the most difficult job, the most thankless job you can ask for, because you're generally just getting, you can do everything right and get yelled at. And that's hard. It's a hard way to make a living.
Like a meter maid, but without government benefits.
Without the uniform. Without the snappy uniform.
Without any authority.
So that's my guess. There's companies already talking about that. Companies are already turning to tours that are with automated locks. So you just let them in. Nobody takes the tour. That's the direction we're moving for sure.
What's the trickle down effect of that though, Daniel? Like again, my worldview is so shaped by single family. I am a single family rental investor. So like I know who buys these things, right? Like I assume multifamily is some level of like major institutional capital. Some like syndications are kind of like doing this kind of stuff. Some of it is like the one guy that like has it and is building a portfolio of multifamily or mom and pop. Like what does the economy of this thing look like, and how deep does this go? Is this something that is going to make it so that this becomes just way more institutionalized and this is only big companies because there's going to be such a consolidation because it's going to be so scalable once you take the human out of the equation? Is this going to democratize somebody like you being able to grow a portfolio of small multifamily? Tell me more from the investor front, from the capital flow.
I think that the same democratization of the ability to invest and operate properties that you're already seeing at the single family level through a company like Vendoroo, where you would never deign to manage your own properties before Vendoroo because you don't want the headache, and the headache is massive, right? It's probably the biggest deterrent to people investing in real estate. So
it's why I don't manage my own property.
Why would you? Like, it's not worth it. Pay the 7%, 10% to somebody else is doing that same democratization. I think you'll see in multifamily. You can have non-enterprise level operators providing a high level of service that normally takes a level of overhead to provide. Like, you cannot train people properly unless you've got over, like, say 5,000 units, because you can't afford a full-time trainer. And so as multifamily companies get larger, their ability to provide better service at the site level improves, because they can do more training, they can create more training materials, they can drill people, and make sure their skills are sharp. They can create training tools. They have better recruiting. So, when the turnover happens, they can find better people. That all comes off the table now. You can now operate your property like the big boys, because you have the most well-trained individual teammate, let's say, in your AI teammate, that you can possibly have. The same 10 years of experience that the guy at the large operator has, right? Who's getting paid twice as much. So there's an economic benefit to this. I don't like to talk about it. I like to lead with this, because there's this notion that landlords are greedy. Multifamily landlords are greedy. They get papered with this all the time. Anytime they raise rents, there's an angry discourse that's happening on the Capitol Hill right now about rent controls, et cetera. So it's a bit of a third rail. However, the net of result of this is going to be better returns on multifamily properties. It's just going to be the case in terms of NOI. Properties will reduce at scale. They will be reducing the expense at the property level, because they will be doing more with less. People will be more efficient. People will be off-site, perhaps in pods. Like I was talking about property managers, drawing away. Like they may not go away, but they may be off-site somewhere now, because they don't have to be at the property every day. So all those things, the savings from all that, accrue to the P&L of the individual properties. So multifamily assets should provide better cash flows than they do today on a per unit basis. It's true.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is it sounds like it's good for the whole system, right? Like if there's more margin and there's less entry barriers to doing this, that breeds competition, and competition is generally good for the consumer, and the consumer in this case would be renter nation that's growing up right now, of like these like Gen Z and stuff that is going to have the option of having everything from like the really big institutional people to like the more mom and pops, and the variety of business models, right? Like I see it in single family. What's very clear to me is that right now there is, the option to have it professionally managed, or the option to have it managed by somebody that does it as a side hustle, whether it's a DIY person or it's like a realtor that isn't really, like a property manager, but they're just doing a couple. And I think there's just going to be many different versions of many different niches of different ways of doing it as this thing happens in single family. And it sounds about parallel to multifamily then, right? Like we are lowering these traditional human scale entry barriers where you needed a certain amount of resources in order to provide a certain level of service that you definitely need in order to like get into that game. And as that continues to happen, then the market will play out and the consumer will have more options to live in. Is that about right?
I can see that scenario. I think it's also plausible that if you reduce your payroll burden that has to be covered by property rent, that you could actually see some downward pressure on rents. People can become a little more competitive. That's also a possible outcome of this. I think that the most tangible effect on the end consumer, being the renter, will be just a better experience being a renter.
Yeah.
And for owners, a better experience being a renter does sometimes equate to renters being willing to pay more than they would otherwise, if they're happy and their needs are taken care of. So I guess that sort of leads to, well, there'll be optionality, right? Renters will be happier, maybe willing to pay more. Properties will be less expensive to run, maybe can lower rents. It'd be hard to say, but I think that it is inevitable one way or the other. It's just, there's no reason to have people doing a job that they may not be good at, that they're more expensive than AI, that they're unreliable, they make mistakes, they turn over, they get a different job, they leave. you got to deal with some, like, it just know if you can avoid that pain, and you will, as a property owner, you just will.
Yeah, makes sense. It's really interesting to be on this ride with you. It's super interesting to have you come in with your experience. And more than anything, I enjoy your way of treating people. Like, I think that you've come to the team as someone that adds value and is very considerate about asking things of people. So I can tell you're just like this like well-formed leader that's been around, and you know what you're doing. And I'm really pumped to get into this like multifamily stuff and see where this goes, man, and hit up a couple shows together and go crush, dude. So I'm pumped. I'm pumped you're
It's
on
going to
board.
be awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for that.